Okay, this video will show you how to open the handle of your Neat and unclog the mineral deposit that is blocking your steam. Before you start, make sure the Neat is turned off, cold, and depressurized. And you will need a number 1 and a number 2 Phillips screwdriver or drill bit to open the handle of your Neat. There's 2 different sides of your Neat handle, one with a bunch of screws on it. We'll start here on this side where you're going to notice only 2 screws at the top. You'll start by removing those 2 screws. Put those screws somewhere safe. Now we'll flip over the handle to the other side and we'll begin by removing the rest of the screws. Start with the front 2 screws. Now we should be able to open the handle of your Neat gently. Flip it like this. Now we can see everything inside. First, you'll be removing the trigger here. It should just slide out easily like this. Set that to the side. Next, we'll be removing this front piece here. For these 4 screws, take note, 2 are shorter, 2 are longer. They'll go back in the same way that you took them out. Now we can remove this front piece. Maybe stuck a tiny bit. Next we'll be removing these 2 screws at the back. Now we can remove the rest of the hose from the handle. Set that to the side. This is the piece here we'll need to unscrew. This should be where the mineral deposit is clogging the hose. You'll take your number 1 Phillips screwdriver to remove these 2 screws. It might be stuck a bit as there might be some calcification there. Just jiggle it a bit, you'll be able to remove it. Please take note, you have 1 red O-ring here. There's also a clear O-ring here that may have fallen out or it may be damaged or missing. Just make sure you take note of that. Inside this piece here, you may see some mineral buildup. You can just rinse that out with some water. The best way to unclog this is to run it under a tap for a minute or 2 with some warm water. If that doesn't work, you can blow some air into one end, out the other, and that should release the mineral deposit. Once that is clear, we can begin reassembling the Neat handle. To reassemble the handle of your Neat, we can start by taking the hose end, and we'll take this piece here and we'll put it back in here, making sure the O-ring is intact and both sides are free from any debris. You can line up to make sure it's in the right spot. There's 2 notches on this part that should line up to make the full circle. You can then take these very small screws and screw them back in place. It is important to make sure that these screws are screwed in tightly to avoid any potential steam leak when it's under pressure in the future. Once we have it looking like this, we can now put the hose back in the handle. You'll take about 5 or 6 rings of the hose inside the handle, lining up with these 2 screw holes. That should be enough. You can then take the hose and line up these 2 holes here with the 2 holes on the handle. And the front part should slide in nicely here. Also making sure the O-ring in this part is still there and is not missing. It can be difficult to see because it's clear. We'll then take 2 of the longer silver screws and attach the back of the hose to the handle. Try not to over tighten those screws as it is plastic and it can strip. We're now ready to put the nozzle back on the handle. You have 2 sides. These indentations here should be on the bottom so it fits on top of these screw holes here. You also have 2 points here that should line up with the 2 holes at the front of the handle. You can start by lining those up first and pushing them nicely in place. Next, you can make sure that this back part is seated nicely. Both sides should not move. You'll now take the 2 longer silver screws that you have remaining. They will go in this hole and in this hole. And the 2 smaller screws should go in the other 2 holes. It should look something like this. Make sure that these screws are quite tight, not over tightened, but we don't want there to be a gap between this piece and the piece on the bottom. So you can just take a little bit of a look and just make sure it is sitting tightly. Next, we're ready to put the trigger back. You have a pin here that will line up with this hole here in the front. You also have a small tab at the back of the trigger that is going to sit inside the handle here. And you want this silver piece plate here to touch the brass pin. Once it's sitting like this, you can hold on to the handle and just test to make sure that it's working and moves freely. Now we're ready to flip the handle over and attach the other half. Should be no gaps on either side, just like this. And we can now put the screws back in. Remember to use the longer screws at the back half of the handle, and we save the 4 shorter screws for the front. Two on this side, we'll flip the handle over, and the last 2 screws go in the other side. sure it's nice and tight still, and that should be it. Hope that helps.